Canada likes to present itself as transparent, predictable, accountable, but right now, something is happening quietly, behind closed doors, behind official press releases, behind carefully chosen words. While headlines still talk about one fighter jet, Canada may already be preparing for another, not American, not stealth-heavy, not what many assumed, but Swedish, the Saab Gripen. And if you think this story is only about aircraft, you're already missing the bigger picture. Because this isn't just about replacing aging jets, it's about industrial power, it's about sovereignty, it's about trade wars, and it's about a country quietly hedging its future. For decades, Canada's air defense relied on the CF-18, a reliable workhorse, but one that has clearly reached the limits of its lifespan. Cracks in airframes, rising maintenance costs, shrinking readiness rates. The clock has been ticking loudly. Officially, the solution seemed clear. Canada announced its intention to move forward with the F-35 Lightning II, the American fifth-generation stealth fighter. A jet surrounded by power, prestige, and politics. A jet that symbolized alignment with the United States and NATO's most advanced air forces. On paper, the decision looked settled, but here's where the story begins to fracture, because even after the announcement, Canada never fully closed the door. Internal reviews continued, quiet evaluations persisted, and one name never disappeared from the background discussions: Saab Gripen. The Gripen was never supposed to win. Not politically, not commercially, not publicly, yet it refused to disappear. Why? Because the Gripen offers something no American jet ever truly does: control. Control over software, control over upgrades, control over weapons integration, control over mission data. In modern air combat, the most powerful weapon is not speed or stealth, it's permission. And American jets come with strings attached. Software locks export approvals, update schedules controlled elsewhere. For years, Canada accepted this reality without protest. But times have changed, and so has trust. Canada and the United States are allies. Deep allies. But allies can still fight. And they have: steel tariffs, aluminum tariffs, retaliatory measures, sudden policy shifts, moments that forced Ottawa to confront an uncomfortable truth. Even the closest partnerships can become leverage. When trade becomes a weapon, dependence becomes a liability. Quietly, that realization reshaped thinking inside Canadian defense and industry circles. And this is where the Gripen re-enters the picture. Not as a jet, but as a strategy. Saab didn't just offer aircraft. They offered something far more provocative: factories, assembly lines built in Canada, maintenance and overhaul hubs on Canadian soil, local control over sustainment, thousands of skilled jobs, technology transfer that went beyond symbolic offsets. Not subcontracting, not peripheral work, core industrial capability. In an era where global supply chains snap overnight, that promise carried enormous weight, because modern fighter jets are not built once. They are sustained for decades. Every upgrade, every software patch, every component replacement becomes a dependency, and dependencies can be weaponized. Publicly, Canadian officials spoke carefully. They emphasized interoperability, alliance cohesion, and capability. Privately, concerns piled up: long-term costs, upgrade timelines, access to mission systems, sovereignty in crisis scenarios. And one question kept resurfacing in closed rooms: what happens if the United States says no? What happens if software access is delayed? What happens if political priorities shift? What happens if Canada's needs diverge from Washington's? Because modern fighter jets are not just machines. They are political permissions encoded in software. While public attention drifted elsewhere, Sweden stayed patient. No loud lobbying, no pressure campaigns, no media blitz. Just quiet diplomacy, and quiet diplomacy often something is moving. Meetings continued. Industrial proposals evolved. Factory locations were discussed, not announced. Feasibility studies quietly advanced. Not commitments. Not decisions. Options, always options. Canada, after all, is at the edge of a changing world. The Arctic is no longer quiet. Russian bomber patrols push closer. Chinese interest in northern routes grows. Surveillance gaps become strategic vulnerabilities. Gripen was designed for environment. Short runways. Dispersed operations. Rapid turnaround. Survival without massive infrastructure. Jets that can operate from highways. Jets that can be serviced by small teams. Jets built for resilience, not just dominance. Suddenly, the so-called second-best jet didn't look second-best at all. So why is all of this happening quietly? Because reversing course publicly would be explosive, with Washington would strain, defense industry backlash would follow, political credibility would take damage. So instead, Canada appears to be taking the slow path. Industrial groundwork before political announcement. Hedging before commitment. Options before decisions. Once factories are planned, even tentatively, momentum begins. Once supply chains are discussed, interests form. Once jobs are promised, pressure builds. And that's the dangerous part, because by the time the public debate restarts, the decision may already be functionally made, not in Parliament, not in press conferences, but in contracts, zoning permits, and industrial plans. The jet choice might be decided long before it's ever announced, and this is only the beginning of the story. Canada's air defense is deeply intertwined with the United States. Shared command, shared sensors, shared threat assessments. Behind closed doors, officials raised a dangerous question: can a non-F-35 platform fully integrate into future NORAD upgrades? It wasn't a technical concern, it was a psychological one, because suggesting incompatibility meant suggesting national vulnerability. And no politician wants to be blamed for weakening defense. The threat wasn't exclusion, it was doubt. Sweden wasn't supposed to win, it was supposed to participate, and then lose quietly. Instead, Sweden did something radical. It treated Canada as an equal. No software leash, no upgrade permission, no political strings. That terrified Washington more than any radar cross-section, because Gripen represented strategic decentralization, a world where allies don't need permission, interoperability doesn't mean submission, military power isn't monopolized. The danger wasn't Gripen's performance, it was Gripen's philosophy. Publicly, the Pentagon justified everything with one word: China. Advanced sensors, data fusion, joint operations. But China exposed a contradiction. If the goal was resilience, why centralize control in one country? If the goal was survivability, why rely on a single logistics network? Gripen's decentralized model made sense for modern warfare, which made Washington's insistence suspicious. Was this really about defeating China, or preserving dominance? By this stage, Canada faced an impossible choice. If choose Gripen, gain sovereignty, risk friction with Washington, and if choose F-35, preserve alliance harmony, accept dependency. This was no longer a procurement decision, it was a philosophical one, and the Pentagon knew that. Which is why the pressure never stopped. Canada wasn't choosing a fighter jet, it was choosing how much independence it could afford.